Hello everyone, well, welcome back to the Peninsulas. It has been a while since we posted. Somehow life just got away from me after the holidays, and sometimes it's harder to catch up than I expect, but we have been having some very frosty mornings here, and it's very rare to have frost on the grass like this and everything kind of looks silver. But we've had a couple of those days, and so it's just been kind of nice to focus on the animals during these cold days. And it's very rare here in Florida to get any ice in the water buckets, but as you can see here, there's just the thinnest little layer of ice on this water bucket. So it's kind of fun to go out and just break it up, knowing that this is not real winter, and that most people have to actually pick away at hunks of ice in their water troughs up north. But down here, if we get a little bit of ice in the water, it's kind of a big event. So it's a little bit fun. Some changes have happened around here. So these ladies are no longer here. They went down the road to my neighbor's house for retirement. And wouldn't you know it, as soon as they got there, they started laying eggs again. Which is just the way it goes sometimes. But they needed to go, and I'll talk more about them later, but this is the only water that was frozen solid. It was the quail's water, so I had to get the whole hunk out of there so that more water could flow into their little pods. But everyone came through the cold really well. We have some more cold days coming up, so it's going to be interesting. But yeah, life goes on. We've been mulching the roses, trying to get them in good shape for spring. I planted them all along the back of my house here, so. And then another kind of sad event that we've done recently is I took my calf to the sale, and he was such a good boy. He loaded right up, even though he didn't know what was happening. And it's always a little bit sad because Cacao calls for him for a few days afterwards, and it's just one of those things that's not necessarily very fun. But I can't keep all the creatures here, and he would have had to go eventually, so we just took him to the sale. I didn't get the actual unloading on camera, but he did really well, and they should send a check in the mail in the next few days. The cattle prices are up right now, so I expect that he did pretty well at the sale. Of course, there's always the arduous chores afterwards of just cleaning out the trailer and kind of feeling a sense of loss, but it's just all kind of what has to happen on the farm, and we just continue on and continue to appreciate the animals that get to stay and try to take care of them. So in that vein, Windy Girl the goat has been doing really well in the winter. I keep an eye on her mucous membranes on her eyes because goats do get anemic from parasites, but so far she's been staying a healthy pink. So after the calf left, I turned my attention to Cacao. She needs to be dewormed, and she started to get minerals in her feed. Now that we're not milking her, and I'm just trying to beef her up before she goes down the road to get bred. So I take her to my neighbor's house, less than a quarter mile down the road, and she allows me to use her bull to breed Cacao every year, so that's really helpful. So yeah, right now we're just beefing her up, getting her healthy, and ready for that adventure. So today we are back in the winter garden, and I just wanted to show you the progress of some of these vegetables. So you can see here we have a lot of broccoli coming on, and we have these bigger stalks on actually all the plants right now are producing, so that's pretty exciting. And then we have the little guys, and then if you look down in, so this is a good example, you can see all the little tiny broccoli shoots coming up from the main stem. So that's really exciting. You can actually also see where we cut this one. So this was a big broccoli bunch up here, and we already have been eating broccoli from these plants along and along. So it's really nice. And even though you cut off a big stalk like this, you still have a lot of babies coming up. So it just keeps growing and you don't have to harvest the whole plant again. These are kind of my favorite kind of garden plants to have, instead of, say, cabbage, which I love cabbage, but you have to plant a million cabbages to get a good yield because you have to take the whole plant. But plants like this that just keep producing the fruit are my favorite. So then you can just keep going. Now, also super exciting, if we look closely at the Brussels sprouts, I wanted to show you what it looks like when they are growing as well. So you have to get way down in there, but you can see all these little bumpies in the stalk root. Those are all going to turn into a Brussels sprout. So these plants are actually really healthy and happy, and I think they're enjoying the cold winter weather, and we will be getting some of those as well. Hopefully, if nothing eats them. And then, if we make our way down to the cauliflower section. So, I have never grown cauliflower before, so this is really exciting. I love cauliflower. So here, you can see that it forms little heads inside the leaves. And then this is actually another stem. It looks like the same plant, but it's not. It's its own plant. But so I have two right here, and then I have one coming down here. I have tried to grow cauliflower before, but I think I planted them too early at the end of the summer. So they were too hot for too long and they didn't really take off. I planted these guys later in the year after it had already started cooling off a bit, and they've done much better. So if I had known they would do this well, I would have planted a bunch more, but it's really exciting to have these three. And the broccoli has done way better than expected. So you can see here, all these plants are putting on actual broccoli. Now, if you wait too long to pick it, it will, instead of being more of a dense clump, it will start to get a little bit pulled apart and spindly. And then these little guys turn into flowers. So this is actually the flowering part of the plant that we eat. And these little yellow flowers will pop out all over if you don't harvest it. So if you're wanting to eat your broccoli, it's important that you harvest it before it turns into a bouquet. All right, so the other thing I wanted to show you is way down at this end. So these are still the collards. We've been eating those for the past few weeks. And then this is my one cabbage, which is actually doing quite well. I think it's going to be a nice size once it's done forming the round part. So that's doing well. But down here, my dad actually planted all these. Unbeknownst to me, which was awesome. It was a really cool surprise. So he says that there's red, yellow, and white onions planted here. And they were little onion sets, but they've grown quite a bit in the last few days. We did get a really nice rain, about 1.75 inches, like 2 days ago. And since then, these guys have really taken off. So I'm super excited to be harvesting some onions, hopefully in the spring. While we're here, we can check in with the chickens. They are not babies anymore. They're almost full grown. And our one rooster has started to wreak havoc on all the ladies. So he is currently in an ad. Hopefully somebody will want a nice rooster. But we didn't really bank on having a rooster, so hopefully someone will want to purchase him. But the rest of the ladies, they're doing really well. They're getting really big, and they're actually quite friendly. They like to interact, which is always fun. So a couple of things that I wanted to point out with selling the calf. One, he was going on 5 months old, so he was old enough to be weaned. And because he was so big, he was really pulling Cacao down in body weight and health. So that was the main reason of going ahead to sell him at the time that we did. And then for deworming Cacao, I used the Cydectin Poron this time. I try to alternate that with the oral Valvaison, in case you guys are wondering. So this time it was just the Poron. And then the reason I don't give her minerals during milking is because we found that it makes the milk taste metallic. So I make sure that she has free choice minerals when we're not milking, but when we are, I kind of hold those back. So here, I said I was going to talk about the chickens again. So they left and we cleaned out their coop. They went down the road to my neighbor's house where they'll get to live out their days. Now, they are still young enough to be laying. They weren't laying consistently for me anymore. But more than that, I ordered the 25 new hens that are out in the chicken tractor, and they just started laying over the last few days. So we really don't have room for 37 chickens on the farm. We're not really set up for that many. And so that's why I kind of moved the older girls out. And then we cleaned out this coop. So it was cleaned, new dirt brought in, and then we put diatomaceous earth down and let that sit for a few days. And then this is me putting lime down on top. And it was actually just prior to rain coming. So I let the rain kind of soak the lime into the ground. And we're gonna let that sit for probably about a week before putting the new girls in there. So with more cold, wet days coming, I put more hay in with the quail. I am still getting an egg here and there. They're not laying a ton right now, but they are still laying a little bit. And I just try to keep them as warm as possible and make sure that they have enough hay piled up in there that they can kind of burrow in and get out of the wind. That's the main thing for these guys. Quail actually seem to enjoy the cold, but they do need kind of a windbreak sometimes. So that's what we've been doing for them. So you guys will know, if you live out in the country, that there are always unwanted varmints around. But look at this little guy. Isn't he cute? He's barely a teenager. And the wild thing is that I had this trap open, but I didn't have any bait or food in there. So he just wandered in for no reason at all and got stuck. So we take him to the local Dollar General and turn him loose. Hopefully he doesn't come back. So these strawberries I got from my neighbor, and I just found out a little something about doing bare root strawberries. So if you pull them up and you just have their roots hanging out, and you dry them out, they just kind of chill until you're ready to plant them. And then you want to soak them in water for about 30 minutes, I think it said, and then go ahead and plant them, and then they do fine. They take off. So these were my bare root strawberries that I got from my neighbor, and I already had a couple strawberry plants in this raised bed, and I wanted to just add what she gave me to them so that this bed will be nice and full of strawberries once the warmer weather comes. So first I had to get all these pine needles and leaves out and just kind of dig up the dirt so it was loose, get kind of the weeds and stuff around the edge out. And as always, Ginger Snapper is there to help me. She's always very helpful. But it's very therapeutic to plant plants. I don't know. I just really enjoy it. Something about digging in the dirt is very calming for me. So I don't have much in my raised beds right now. I only have one raised bed that's planted, and it's got herbs. I've got a lemon balm in there, some rosemary, and parsley. But that's about it. So, I really thought that the cats might use my raised beds more for litter boxes, but thankfully that has not been the case so far. Now that I said that, they'll probably think of it. But, yeah, so I just separated these. They had been soaking, so I separated them into their different little parts. And really, it's my understanding that all you really need is that root cluster. So whether there's a bunch of leaves on it is not as important. In fact, I don't think you would want a bunch of leaves on these, because you want the plant to put its energy down into the roots once it's planted and not have to worry about maintaining foliage right at first. And then once the roots get established, then it can put out its own new growth. And that's the same with any cuttings that you might do with plants. You want to strip them of leaves, except for maybe one or two at the top. And the only reason you would leave those one or two is to see, is the plant still alive, or is the cutting still alive, or are those one or two leaves at the top dying? And that kind of gives you an indication of whether your cutting is taking root or just not thriving at all. So that's what I did with these guys, and I made sure to water each one. And there were kind of too many for just this one raised bed. I didn't want them too crowded and competing for nutrients, so I went ahead and planted the rest of them in a separate one with some of my onion sets that were started there. So these are just cabbages I'm watering, but I haven't planted them in the ground yet. I'm gonna wait until after the cold spell, which I think we have another week of sub-freezing temperatures, and then after that I'll plant these guys in the ground. They may be a bit behind, but hopefully they will take off before spring. So there's nothing like making some broth and soup on cold days. So I was gonna tell you guys what I put in this soup. So basically, I boiled my pork shoulder roast. It was bone in. I boiled it overnight, so about 12 hours. So I made bone broth, and then I strained out the bones and the meat. I chopped up the meat that was left on it and put it back in. I also added potatoes, carrots, onions, cauliflower, and then this is broccoli from my garden. So you can see it has the yellow flowers on it still. You can eat the flowers of broccoli. It's still good for you, and it actually adds some nice color to whatever dish you're making. So it was actually really fun to put that on top and just stir it in and see the green and yellow just kind of get mixed into the soup. So it was a very hearty soup, very rich. And then I let that boil for a couple hours, just because I wasn't quite ready to eat it yet. And it just allowed all the flavors to kind of soak in together. And then as far as seasonings, I put fresh rosemary and parsley from the garden, and then I also added turmeric and some oregano, as well as salt and pepper. So it was really good. I wish you guys could smell it. This was after the vegetables had been cooking in there for a couple hours, and it was ready to eat. So this guy, this guy here, broke his winter jacket. And I don't think he did it on purpose. He just ripped one of the buckles off the front. So just another one of those farm chores that comes up unexpectedly. I went and bought some new buckles. I found an old ring from an old halter tie that I could use for the clasp. And then I got some heavy duty thread and I just sewed his jacket back together, stuffed the stuffing back inside, and repaired that buckle. And it actually, so to give you guys an idea of what these unexpected projects will take out of your day, this took 2.5 hours to sew this back together because it was ripped in 4 different locations, and also the Velcro was ripped halfway off, so I had to sew that back on. And then I had to sew the buckles on as well. So 2.5 hours of my time to fix this horse blanket. But at least he'll be cozy for the cold days ahead. In other news, we snatched the unexpected rooster out of the chicken tractor. He has not sold yet, so I didn't want him harassing the hens anymore. So we put him in solitary confinement over here in this smaller coop. Now that the other hens are gone, I have some empty spaces. So he's over there by himself. And as you can see, Mr. Chicken is keeping an eye on him for sure. He doesn't let him get away with anything. And he has positioned himself between the interloper rooster and the ladies in the chicken tractor. So he's on top of things. But other than that, we are just trying to stay warm and dry here on these rainy, cold winter days. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. As always, like, subscribe, comment, share. We really appreciate you watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.